down to the local level. And does everyone know where Flint, Michigan is? Right around the corner, pretty much. So I'm just going to be looking at these issues, and the key word, as Daniel said, was ownership, or who's going to take the responsibility for these actions, and if so, is the damage already done? Is it irreversible? In this case, no. Children have been poisoned. So the roadmap is to offer a cultural and peace-based understanding of Flint's ongoing crisis through the lens of human rights and sustainable peace. We have to always think about who is it affecting. That's where grassroots or peace movements start. So understanding where people are and how they will do, and how they're functioning in their society, in their cultural realm, is an anthropological perspective that I bring to this as well. This research seeks to empower the people on the ground themselves through an array of qualitative methods, especially because during this entire process, when water that's coming down in your faucet is yellow, they never asked. They never asked the people, and they never said, well, what's your problem? They just made governmental decisions, one after another, left and right. So if you're not going to talk to the people that are going to get affected by it, who are you going to talk to? So I was hoping to bring a voice and an avenue to communicate to the people there, and holistically and comprehensively describe the ongoing Flint water crisis. It is still ongoing, and well, we'll get into that, and demonstrate methods of working towards building sustainable and long-term communities, show the imminent threats on the local, national, and global levels of addressing issues of water insecurity, and providing an applicable plan of action towards peace. The central question is, how do we provide safe and affordable drinking water in aging urban environments? The United States has 700,000 miles of water pipelining systems spanned across the United States that are 100 years or older, most of which are in desperate need of repair. The infrastructure that we have is crumbling. I don't know if it's that big of a problem in Michigan, but roads, potholes, no one has been upkeeping them, and then they're thinking about building all these new roads and this new infrastructure, but we still don't know how to damn maintain the ones right now that is affecting populations for the rest of our future and the human race as a whole. So, third world. What do I mean by third world? I also did research in Togo, West Africa, and looking at it, that's what third world means to me, is that, and you could use the world systems theory and of Emmanuel Emerson, and looking at the core, the periphery, you're going to have a really rich core where all the people are in the middle. Your periphery is where everyone's going to be moving, with all the poor people, and very low class people that are impoverished, and they're going to continue to stay in an impoverished cycle. That's what I saw in Togo when I lived in a village for a month with people that were honestly more moral and more accountable for their actions in their own self-governing way than what was demonstrated by the state of Michigan, the federal EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States. These were images of third world Togo. These are children using the water from the lakes and the sea over there, and then taking back. But there's still water scarcity, so water conflict exists in so many different ways. And that water that the little boy is drinking, it could be killing him. You don't know what's in there. There's contamination, and they drink a lot of rainwater. Well, rainwater harvesting is good, but until not if it's not done properly. So there has to be proper implementation of the method. And then the next thing is third world Flint. This is what's happening in Flint. So, except this child has burns all over his body, and the mother claims that it's from the lead in the water. But there's a high presence of Legionnaire's disease that's showing up in a lot of testing right now, and lead causes irreversible damage. So if you're a child and you're exposed to it and you drink this in pretty significant quantities, that child could have the potential of developing cognitive learning abilities or disabilities, not being able to special ed in the future is going to be going up because a number of people, because of public water. Because of public water that was also touted as being clean despite it being yellow, that was a failure of government on so many different levels. So this is just a little, I had talked about most of this, but looking at what happened, the main problem was that we don't know how to manage our distribution systems, especially because our infrastructure is terrible. And we're living off of our parents and grandparents' dime that have spent money to keep infrastructure sustainable, but the problem is we're not investing as much money as we used to. We spend a lot more on security. The federal budget goes to security and war, and especially in the wake of all the new terrorism that's going on. But we only spend about 3 to 4% of our federal budget on urban infrastructure. And actually, infrastructure in general across the United States. And I'm not just talking about water piping. I'm talking about everything in between as well. Looking at roads, looking at ways in which bridges are. You see, there's lots of problems that are going on. Sustainable peace building and human protection, and physiological manifestations, ongoing movements, and systems of aging, systems that are aging and that are going to need repairing, and we're going to need to be paying for it. So, what happens when? So Flint is a city of 40% of its people live on the poverty line, as declared by the World Bank. But the problem is that everything in Detroit happened in Flint. Everything in Detroit is an American city, right? So it's touted as saying, it describes the American story very in a compressed way. We go in cycles where it experienced the biggest depopulation in the history of the United States within a short period of time. That's the same thing that happened in Flint. At its peak, it was 200,000 people living in Flint. Now there's only about almost 100,000. So it's actually 99,000, about 99,000 now. So from 200,000 people, that was General Motors ran the city when the automotive industry was booming and peaking. So when this was happening, or when 200,000 people are here, yeah, we can build up our infrastructure and we can do everything, but when our tax base isn't good now, what are we going to do? And so that's why conflict comes into play, because conflict theory is the view that crime results from the from the imposition by the rich and powerful of their own moral standards and economic interests on the rest of society. So what I mean by this, rich and powerful in this case is the state of Michigan, the EPA, the federal EPA. So there's different levels of regulating water infrastructure. On the federal level, the Environmental Protection Agency, Clean Water Act, and on the state level, you had Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and DEQ. On the local level, you also have boards, the local water board, the Flint Water Board. So we forgot about the people. So that's what happened when government took these decisions, and there's different kinds of qualitative methods that I've used, but the most useful has been ethnography and how the news has been reporting this issue. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, there's approximately 155,000 public water systems in the United States that provide drinking water to about 320 million people in the U.S. Water supply distribution systems span almost 1 million miles in the United States and are prone to wear and tear. The legislation that protects it on the federal level, EPA, EPA Safe Drinking Water Act, which was first enacted in 1974, which is based on the lead and copper rule. The lead and copper rule says that when you do water sample testing, if you have 15 parts per billion as a measure and at the 10% significant level, then you have to take action and you have to inform the public. But the problem is what happens when you're informed that the water is clean and people drink it. About 16% of the people worldwide lack access to safe drinking water, causing hardship, disease, and poverty. So getting the lead in. So if you look here, this is where they sourced. So what happened was that the city of Flint used to get its water through a pipeline that went from Lake Huron and that was operated by the Detroit water system. But what they decided was that, hey, costs are getting too high. They had a restructuring of their finances. If the costs are going to be way too high, instead of saying, oh, let's negotiate, they said, no, we're going to build our own pipeline. So number one, austerity. So they're always trying to prove and be self-independent upon each other. So, and Detroit and Flint always have been kind of rivals. The state of Michigan, southeast Michigan is weird. There's problems within the suburbs and the suburbs of Detroit. In the city of Detroit, there's always these fights and finger pointing and blaming. But when they switched, they said we're going to build a new pipeline. To build a new pipeline, it's going to take 2 to 3 years. What are we going to do in the middle? They said, no, we're going to take water from the Flint River. Now, the state of Michigan also has an emergency financial manager law, which is undemocratic in its very nature, and the financial manager law says that the state of Michigan, the governor, which is Governor Rick Snyder, can, if your city and your municipality is determined to have a financial crisis specifically, then they can come over and take over all actions, override any local authority, the elected officials that the people put into place to make decisions, and this one person can say, here's what's happening. Now that was a decision that was made by the emergency manager to look at the Flint River, and then they go to the water treatment center, and at the water treatment center you're supposed to add anti-corrosive agents to make sure that there's no lead that's going to be, so the lead isn't actually coming from the Flint River. The lead is inside specifically these service lines, not the main pipelines, the service lines that go to each one of your homes. If they're built before the 1930s, you have a good chance that you're going to have lead in those lines. So they're coated with lead on the inside. But what happens is river water is more corrosive. It's much more corrosive than lake water, where the Detroit water comes from. And when they don't add anti-corrosive agent, which is phosphorus, what happens is that it's going to literally, the water pressure and everything's going to push and seep lead into your water. The federal law says that you should always add anti-corrosive agents. So this is something that's been going on for years. The same situations happened 70 years ago in the same city with the same damn people with the same damn law. And we didn't learn our lesson then. What is saying that we're going to learn a lesson now? Government austerity. And now there's claims of racism. Your legacy is murder, right? So if all these children are dead, there's children that have passed away. There's children that are severely sick right now in hospitals, and not just children, animals that are drinking this water. And just cash-strapped cities, thinking about living off water bottles, having no water. How long is it going to take you to shower? There's people giving you water bottles, people, all of celebrities. And looking at that, it's a tough life to live. And like I was saying, water problems are, and this is the state of Michigan, where you have your capital right here, Flint, and Detroit's going to be right here. So it's a very interesting area. I'm somewhere around there, I think. So look at all that. The Great Lakes, the single largest collection of freshwater water sources in the entire world. We have it right here, yet we have the worst problems right here. And water has to be addressed as a human rights issue. The right to water is fundamentally linked to a slew of other rights: right to education, right to housing, right to life, right to work, right to protection, and water is essential for life. Food security, to get income, and to have environmental protection, to build a community. Your environment is part of your community, so how can we have community building without safely upkeeping our environment? And then unequal distribution access is one of the biggest issues of our time, and it goes hand in hand, like I said, with many other issues. Now, looking through anthropology, you're looking at public health. Where's the agency? Where's the agency of the people? This lead contamination we know is going to be, they were continuously lied to. That was the worst problem. The state said, you can drink the water, it's okay. Okay, I'm going to trust the state. So what happens in this entire process when you know that the state is poisoning you, right? And the people that in Flint, the people that are voted, they have no power. And no one wants to take blame. So where is the ownership, like you were saying, Daniel? Where is the ownership? If there's no ownership, how are we going to ever solve the problem? Look at the difference in the waters. They said it's okay. It's murky, it smells weird, and it's yellow. You can't see through it. Austerity occurs on multiple levels. The emergency manager law needs to get out of here, and it was actually rejected by referendum, yet it still was able to come back. So there's the conflict identity and dynamics of it is also rooted in the culture of peace, looking at compliance. We got to get out of this compliance culture. Our regulatory systems are not working. right? So if our regulations are not working, and we're just trying to be compliant, and the state of Michigan got found loopholes and tried to take over and use different systems of testing it. So if this compliance culture isn't working, what do we do? And looking at mass media, how is the mass media looking at it? The mass media has actually done good, a lot of good for the community citizens of Flint. And because they brought up the issue. And because of that, people actually have water. So the biggest takeaway from this is that justice is an issue of distribution, right? And it's tied to the environment, and it's tied to community recognition, it's tied to peace building. In order for us to create peace, we need to listen to the people. And we can't have undemocratic things happening from the state, and the state cannot be lying to us continuously. Governor Rick Snyder has done a lot of good for the state. He's brought back the state, he's brought back clean energy, but it doesn't matter. Your legacy is what happened in the Flint water crisis, and all these people are going to be ailing for generations to come. And if you sacrifice so much, you sacrifice your opportunity cost, right? If you sacrifice human health to save a buck, I mean, it's not a buck, it's $5 million. But the cost of human health, the costs that are going to be taken right now to fix the problems that have been created by the state. And this is not just the state, this is also EPA too. EPA didn't comply either, so it's federal, state, local. How does this interact and manifest? And there's a lot of good ongoing actions, and we have to care. And this happens in a lot of cities that are with welfare dependency, and this is the trend that we're seeing. And stay tuned, folks. Elk Park is in the news today morning. So in CNNBC, and looking at, there's been, I think, 2 samples that have been elevated levels of lead. So stay tuned is what I got for that. Our plan of action is just to work with intervention methods. And the first thing is have a conclusive plan. And the moral of the story is we need you to tell the truth. And we need you to be accountable. We need you to take ownership. And we need to have understanding for the people and what's happening. And that is pretty much all.